Collectively achieve the safe spaces for the youth. And with me tonight is Linda Madhya, a youth advisor to the Cabinet Secretary of Public Service, Youth and Gender. We also have Felix Nyachio, who is a student consortium for human rights on Amnesty. And I have Mariga Wangombe, who is a communication consultant. And so, starting with you, I'm going to ask, it's now 1 year since the Jubilee government took office, and we mark Youth Week, and our focus is on youth empowerment. As a young person, do you really feel that you have been empowered so far?
Truth is, I don't yet, but that's, well, the truth is that a year is a very short time to measure impact, especially when the Big Four plan has a budget of, what, 400 billion and has a span of we're working towards Vision 2030. In terms of feeling actual impact, I don't yet, but my bigger problem isn't even feeling actual impact. My bigger problem is seeing the systemic problems that still tend to exist in making life for the young people in Kenya easier. Basically ease to cost of running business, the cost of starting business, to the ease of just existing as a young person. It still hasn't been met, and there's still very many problems which keep on coming up over and over and over. And I see progress in some ways, but in many ways I'm unfortunately disappointed in the lack of goodwill that tends to exist.
Okay.
Yes.
For you, Felix, do you feel that so far the young people of this country can claim that they feel empowered in any ways?
We are quite not yet there, but on the right track. With the Big Four agenda, I can say that should the government have the inclusivity of now the youths, then we will be there.
Okay.
And we'll attain the SDG Vision 2030.
Okay. Linda, you from there, it's very good to really have someone now talk, because we need to get answers from the ministry, because that's the best place we can get answers from. And I'm going to ask, since the inception of the Youth Fund, that is the Uwezo Fund, how many people so far have benefited from it, and how many young people are truly aware of this Uwezo Fund?
So, thank you for your question. I'm not sure that I have all the answers, but government has tried to put together funds to support young people to do business. Uwezo Fund is kind of the newest kid on the block. It came after the 2013 elections, the pledge to give the money that was meant for the second, for the rerun. Youth Fund has been there for a while, since about 2006. Youth Fund has disbursed about 12 billion shillings to about 1 million young people across the country since inception. And Uwezo Fund has disbursed about 5 billion, of which around 2.5 billion has gone directly to young entrepreneurs. So the thing about these affirmative funds is that they target a category of the population that is in transition. So the youth that benefited at the inception of the Youth Fund are no longer youth. So, and then there are others who have come into the bracket who also demand that same fund and that same support. So you'll find as time goes, maybe 2-3 years, you feel, young people start feeling like, okay, are we really benefiting? But it's because the ones that benefited have transited. Now you have a new lot. And so for us, it's to try and make sure that these funds are, one, sustainable. And that is why they are evolving, they are repaid, so that the next generation can access them. And then two, to increase the kitty. And you will see as we transition into the Biashara Fund, the funds will be much more than they are. And so more young people will be able to access the funding.
Okay. We have these vocational trainings whereby young people go and they are taught some skills, trained on how to do some certain things. For you, Mariga, how do you feel these vocational training are really helping the young people? And now let's not talk about the young person during that process, after now you've left the vocational training. How do you feel these vocational training are impacting the young people?
Vocational training is very important. We see this also brings another aspect of both county and national government, especially national government, the fact that many of these institutions, like Kenya Poly, were made into a university, which is an extremely problematic thing to do and begin with, because there are enough universities. This is laziness of the highest standard by converting a when you have things like polytechnic university colleges, which is an amusing wonder of the world, because what does that even mean?
Okay.
Because if you study all of these institutions should play very significant functions on their own. Many of the technical staff of many airlines for very many years were taken specifically from Kenya Poly. It's because Kenya Poly was very hands-on training, and that's where the focus was. Now what's happened is that there's been an interesting overlap in terms of, I feel like this is somewhere between trying to help the youth and political promises need to be repaid. Because no new universities have been built since we got in. Actually, if you got to claim, all of what's been done is that colleges and technical training institutes have been converted and given different names, and now their intake has been increased. So the truth is that there have been greater chances for youth to be trained, but this also now comes at a great cost of, one, the quality of the students. Because numbers are good, but quality is better. So these students get training, and then they get training and still have issues in the actual workplace. So first things first, build more. Because like when we're talking about funds, when you say 12 billion divided by 1 million people, my math is not very good, but that's still a very insignificant amount of money. We have a budget of 1.1 trillion. And so even broken down to individual businesses, broken down to the fact that most businesses fail between the first and third attempt, meaning all this money is going down the drain. And truth is that you can't throw money at youth to solve an unemployment problem. And so it's a very good aspect, but in my head, youth funds are at 10% of the actual solution to the problem. Because the truth is that it helps, and some people have benefited from it, but at no point does money actually ever solve employment problems. Most people don't need money. They need the chance to do business quickly. When you're talking about, someone's asking the question, what's the difference between an entrepreneur and a hawker? We promote entrepreneurship, but we beat hawkers, right? So when you talk about youth problems, when we talk about youth and things like those, we think of the more visible youth, right? We think of urban youth who've gone to school. The youth is everyone from that guy on the street selling sweets and all that. And so the technical training, going back to that question, has helped and has helped increase it, but the problem is, in the general societal sense, where people feel like there's an economic slowdown, they still don't even have these opportunities.
Okay.
Yes.
So Felix, do you feel that how can we promote talent among the young people and innovations? How can we make sure that a young person who feels that we can replace sugar with honey for those people who don't like using sugar in their tea? How do we promote such innovations from young people?
Well, first things first is to have well-set mechanisms and policies and institutions, for that matter, that will now start grasping and taking in these kids and these students who have this particular talent per se. Well, you find, like the scenario we've just given of those who prefer sugar, not honey, and those who prefer honey, not sugar. We need the government to focus now more on talents and not just paperwork. Most of the institutions are too much focused on the paperwork, paper aspect. What grades did you get in your standard 8? What did you get in your form 4? What did you get after campus? Is it a first class? Is it a second class upper? They are too much focused on the papers that they're forgetting, like my friend Mariela said, what comes out of the institution, the quality. You'll find that one might lack the capacity of being good in paper, but has the talent. And in order to implement this talent, there has to be an institution and someone to mentor this young kid or this young person. Without that, then there's no link. And that's why we end up having too much talent in the streets and not out here making the life better. And it is in a way, from my point of view, it's disappointing that there are no such institutions. Developed countries have such institutions. If it's acting, there are schools that have people, and that's why we can say that Hollywood, Nollywood, and Bollywood are doing so much better than they're thriving more than our Riverwood here in Kenya. So once we have the set up institutions and the government chips into play, just like the government of Nigeria chipped into play and support Nollywood, then we'll be on the right track.
Okay. Lydia, for you, we have the big four agenda. We have food security, we have infrastructure, we have health. How is the government planning to make sure that as they try to achieve the big four agenda, the young people also are going to feel included in all these? Because I'm sure when we talk about infrastructure, we're going to have roads. When we talk about food security, we'll want farmers to deliver maize, beans and stuff. How is the government making sure that they include the young people in these big four agenda to also have them at the best? Because the young people are the economic drivers of this country.
Thank you for that question. I think before I respond to that one, I'd like to inform my friends that first of all, government has invested heavily over the past 5 years in TVET institutions. And this is in terms of infrastructure, physical buildings, in terms of curriculum development. There's a whole new curriculum for TVET. Then in terms of equipment, because you have to keep up with industry standards, let's say in manufacturing, lots of that equipment has also been purchased, installed and commissioned in, I think, about 90 TVETs. And the ambition, I think you've had the Deputy President and the President repeatedly say that the intention is to make sure that we have these TVETs in each of the constituencies in the country. Then also in terms of talent development, there is the Talent Academy.
Yes.
It's been around for a while. And I think that's something also that young artists can take advantage of. I am personally aware of quite a number of bands, actresses, dance groups that have gone through the training of the Talent Academy and gone out there and prospered in making a living. So perhaps it's to scale it, because there is only one, it is in Nairobi. So perhaps maybe government needs to do this, maybe
make sure
in
that every county there is her talent.
So in terms of scaling, but it's been a very successful program. Now there is what is now being called through the ICT Ministry and Sports Studio Mashinani. Now that will be in every constituency. Studio Mashinani will be a place where you have a production that you want to do in terms of music, video. You can do it in that studio. It will be state of the art, and we already have one that has been kicked off in Limuru. I think it's already running as a pilot, and this is supposed to happen now in every constituency. So I think also sometimes we deny ourselves opportunities because we spend a lot of time online, yes, but possibly tweeting, Facebooking and WhatsApping and challenge us to maybe also once in so often try and Google some of these things. Like, what is government doing for the youth? Just Google it.
But could
and the website will come. But let me go to the question.
Big four agenda first before, let's talk about the big four, because that's a very big thing.
Agenda. There is definitely a plan to involve young people. And if you look at manufacturing, you're talking about skilled workforce, people who have the technical capability to drive the industries that we are trying to build. If you talk about healthcare, fine, it is about the medicine and everything, but it's also about having service providers as close as possible to the people who need services. Then if you look at housing, again, labor, you need the workforce that will build those houses, but more importantly, you need the suppliers of not just the materials that we know, but of also innovative technology to reduce the cost of housing. And then the last one in food security, come on, until young people go back to farming, we will never be food secure. There's just not enough people.
But I'm sure that we have young farmers.
So what we are doing as a government deliberately is to put in place a framework where we are taking young people, identifying, for example, in a housing project that has been selected for funding, how many plumbers, how many electricians, how many this and the other will you need? Then we go and work through the National Youth Service, train the people that we will need, and then attach them to the specific projects that will be happening. In agriculture, we are already training in cotton farming, and we already started, we've planted some BT cotton or something. I think several acres,
Okay.
so that we can begin to have our own cotton, so that we can drive our own textile industries. So there's a lot of detail that has gone into the thinking. There's a whole concept
Okay.
about the involvement of young people. What I would urge the young people to do is to, just get off the couch and look away from your phone for a minute. Go visit an office that is in charge
Yeah.
of a Big Four agenda and ask what the plan is.
Okay.
How can they be involved? Yeah, and then and that's why we are saying in this particular International Youth Day, we are saying nafasi ni safe, but there is a call to action.
Now,
Husika, get
speaking
involved.
of nafasi ni safe, 1 minute, no, 30 seconds for 30 second. How do we now acquire these spaces for the young people? Every person 30 seconds. How do we acquire these spaces?
Acquire these spaces, my push is one, to the government to make these opportunities available. So the thing is, when you're
30
telling
seconds.
the youth on Twitter and Facebook and this and that, which is true, but you have a whole ministry. Your ministry's function is communication. So you can't blame the youth for not looking for it if you don't avail it. Government websites have almost no information. And they can go one by one by one. And I literally can tell you, I've learned more about NYS from people working there. The website does nothing. So avail those information. Also, reduce structural barriers to entry of some of these things. When you talk about agriculture and youth not getting into it, my grandfather's a coffee farmer. I'd never get into it. There's no money. Coffee farmers are perpetually poor. But you can't blame me for seeing my grandfather struggling through it and giving it up and me not getting into it. There are very many problems, structural problems that can be solved. You've talked about housing. When you talk about things like housing, every single example you've used has been the plumbers, electricians, and this and that. You're forgetting young people need to own homes. At no point has the focus been the young people actually owning it. The focus is still the young people building it and then the older people. There's still very many structural problems. I can't own a home. Interest rates, even at the current cap of 14%, would mean I'd pay my whole life for a house. And so it's still, I feel like youth are still need to be involved in unraveling some of these systemic problems. Beyond, I agree the youth need have a place to play, but I believe there's quite a bit that needs to be unpacked beyond the spending.
Okay. Lydia.
I agree, definitely a lot more needs to be done to make the spaces safer, more accessible. It is true, there is lots of barriers. Yeah, the bureaucracy is also not the easiest to maneuver, and we are working hard at that.
Okay.
I think just Huduma Mashinani, the Huduma model is something that we've tried to make it easy for young people to do business.
Okay.
For us, we take the challenge to see that the opportunities we identify for young people in the Big Four, to make sure that we ease access as much as possible.
Okay. Felix, your final words on this?
To the government, inclusivity and mentorship. We need the government to include now